The alarm screamed through the halls of the Time's Eternal Dawn **. Red lights flashed across every wall and ceiling. Tae-hyun ran through the corridor, his heart pounding in his chest. Behind him, he heard explosions and the sound of weapons firing. The diplomatic summit had turned into a nightmare. He pressed his hand against the wall panel and spoke quickly. "Computer. Locate Queen Valera." "Queen Valera is in the royal chamber, section 12, the computer answered. Tae-hyun changed direction and ran faster. His boots hit the metal floor with loud thuds. He had been working on the Coalition flagship for 3 years now. He knew every hallway and every corner. Today, that knowledge might save a life. The attack had come without warning. The Void Reavers, a group that hated the Coalition, had somehow gotten onto the ship. They wore black armor and carried weapons that could cut through walls. Worse, they seemed to know exactly where they were going. They were hunting someone specific. Tae-hyun reached the royal section and found 2 guards lying on the floor. They were still breathing but unconscious. He stepped over them and moved toward the large doors at the end of the hall. The doors were sealed shut. He could hear voices inside. "Open up!" he shouted while hitting the door control panel. Nothing happened. The system was locked. He pulled out his engineering tablet and connected it to the panel. His fingers moved fast across the screen, typing commands and breaking through the security locks. After 30 seconds, the doors slid open with a hiss. Inside the chamber, Queen Valera stood near the window. She was tall and elegant, with silver skin that seemed to glow in the dim light. Her people, the Silvari, were one of the oldest races in the galaxy. They had seen empires rise and fall. But right now, the queen looked worried. "Tae-hyun," she said, recognizing him. "You should not be here. It is dangerous." "That's exactly why I'm here," Tae-hyun replied. He looked around the room, checking for threats. "We need to evacuate you immediately. The Reavers are coming." "I know," Queen Valera said softly. "They have been planning this for months. They want something from me. Information about the old weapons." Tae-hyun moved closer. "Then we definitely need to get you out. Captain Day 1 is organizing the defense. But we need to move now." Queen Valera shook her head. "I cannot leave. They have done something to this room. Can you not feel it? The air is wrong." Tae-hyun stopped and focused. She was right. The air felt heavy, like pressure pushing down on his skin. He pulled out his scanner and swept it across the room. The device beeped frantically. His blood went cold. "There's a bomb," he said quietly. "A quantum bomb. It's hidden in the walls." "I suspected as much," the queen replied. "They are clever. If I try to leave, it will explode." "How do you know?" "Because they told me." She pointed to a small device on the table. "They sent a message. The bomb is linked to my biosignature. If I move more than 3 meters from this spot, everyone on this ship dies." Tae-hyun stared at the scanner. His mind raced through possibilities. Quantum bombs were rare and expensive. They created a chain reaction that could tear a hole in space itself. If one went off on the ship, thousands would die. "There has to be a way," he muttered. He walked around the room, scanning everything. The bomb was sophisticated. It was reading the queen's life signs constantly. Her heartbeat, her brainwaves, even the electromagnetic field her body produced. All of it was being monitored. "You should leave," Queen Valera said. "Save yourself. I have lived a long life." "No," Tae-hyun said firmly. "Humans don't give up that easily." He sat down and opened his tablet. His fingers flew across the screen, pulling up files and schematics. There was a technology that humans had developed recently. It was experimental and dangerous. The neural transfer device. It could copy someone's consciousness pattern and project it temporarily, but it had never been tested in a situation like this. "I have an idea," Tae-hyun said, "but you're not going to like it." He explained his plan. The neural transfer device could copy the queen's biosignature pattern. If he overlaid his own consciousness with her pattern, the bomb would think she was still in the room. It would give her enough time to escape. "That is suicide," Queen Valera said. What happens to you? I don't know, Taehyun admitted. But it's better than doing nothing. I cannot ask you to do this. You're not asking, I'm choosing. Taehyun pulled out the small device from his emergency kit. Every human diplomat carried one, just in case. He had never thought he would actually use it. He attached the sensors to his temples and activated the connection. Contact my sister, he said. Her name is Yuna. Tell her I'm sorry I'll miss her birthday next month. Taehyun, please. Go. Now. He pressed the activation button. Pain exploded through his head as the device began copying the Queen's neural pattern. It felt like fire burning through his brain. He screamed but forced himself to stay still. The device needed 30 seconds to complete the transfer. Queen Valera moved toward the door. The bomb's sensors flickered, confused by the duplicate signatures. 15 seconds. 20 seconds. The Queen reached the hallway. Run! Taehyun shouted. She ran. Alarms began blaring. The bomb had detected something wrong. Taehyun could see it now, glowing behind the wall panels. It was charging up. He had maybe 10 seconds left. The neural transfer completed. His consciousness felt strange, like he was two people at once. He could feel the Queen's patterns mixed with his own. It was overwhelming. The room began to shake. Energy crackled along the walls. Taehyun tried to move, but his body wouldn't respond. The device had locked him in place. At least she's safe, he thought. The bomb exploded. But it wasn't a normal explosion. Instead of fire and force, there was light. Pure white light that filled everything. Taehyun felt himself being pulled apart and put back together at the same time. Reality seemed to tear open around him. He saw the Queen in the hallway, looking back with horror on her face. He saw Captain Day-1 rushing toward them. He saw the stars outside the window, stretching and bending. Then he saw something else. A place that wasn't a place. A space between spaces. It was beautiful and terrible. Time moved differently there. He could see past and future at the same time. Voices called to him from the darkness. Ancient voices that had been waiting for a very long time. The last thing Taehyun heard was Queen Valera screaming his name. Then everything went black, and he fell into the space between worlds. On the time's eternal dawn asterisk, the explosion left a perfect circle of scorched metal in the royal chamber. But there was no debris, no body, nothing. Taehyun had simply vanished. Captain Day-1 arrived and found Queen Valera kneeling on the floor, tears running down her silver face. She was alive. The bomb had failed to kill her, but the cost had been high. The human who saved her was gone. 5 years had passed since that terrible day. Earth had changed in ways nobody expected. The blue planet now had 3 new colony worlds scattered across nearby star systems. Human ships traveled routes that once seemed impossible. Children grew up learning alien languages in school. The galaxy had opened its doors to humanity. And it all started with one man's sacrifice. Yuna stood in front of the memorial statue in Seoul. It showed her brother Taehyun in his diplomatic uniform, looking up at the stars. The sculptor had captured his determined expression perfectly. Flowers and small gifts surrounded the base. Even after 5 years, people still came to remember him. You would hate this, Yuna said quietly to the statue. All this attention. You were never the type to want glory. She placed her hand on the cold stone. Yuna was 30 now. She had spent the last 5 years studying alien biology and searching through old records. Everyone told her to move on. They said her brother was dead and that she needed to accept it. But Yuna had never been good at accepting things. Her tablet beeped. A message from her research partner at the Xenobiology Institute. She read it quickly and felt her heart skip a beat. They had found something, a pattern in the old sensor data from the explosion, something that had been missed 5 years ago. Yuna turned and walked quickly through the park. Seoul looked different now. Alien visitors walked among humans on the streets. Buildings had signs in 5 different languages. A Silvari merchant sold strange fruits at a corner stand. The world had moved forward, but Yuna couldn't move forward. Not yet. Across the galaxy, on the Silvari homeworld, Queen Valera sat alone in her private garden. The plants here grew in colors that didn't exist on Earth. Blues that seemed to sing, purples that felt like sadness. The garden had been designed thousands of years ago by her ancestors. She touched a flower, and it glowed softly under her fingers. 5 years had passed, but the guilt never left. Every day, she remembered the human who died for her. His face haunted her dreams. His final words echoed in her mind. "Your Majesty," a voice called. Her advisor, an old Silvari named Haran, approached carefully. "The council requests your presence. They wish to discuss the succession." "I have told them my answer," Valera replied without looking at him. "They grow impatient. You must produce an heir. It is your duty." "My duty," she repeated bitterly. "I know my duty. A human died because of my duty. I will not dishonor his sacrifice by pretending life is normal." Haran sighed. "The human would want you to live fully, to be happy. You did not know him. None of you did." The advisor left her alone. Valera returned to her flowers, seeking peace that never came. She had built a vast network across the galaxy, searching for any sign that Tae-hyun might have survived. Her agents investigated every spatial anomaly, every strange energy reading, every impossible report. So far, they had found nothing. But Valera refused to stop searching. The human had saved her life. The least she could do was honor him by never giving up hope. In the coalition headquarters, Admiral Day 1 reviewed reports from the border regions. He was older now, with gray hair at his temples. The promotion from captain had come with more responsibility than he wanted, but someone had to keep the peace. And peace was becoming harder to maintain. A new political movement called the Purity Alliance had gained power in several member worlds. They argued that humans were rising too fast, that they had too much influence for such a young species. Some even claimed that Tae-hyun's sacrifice had been exaggerated to gain sympathy. Day 1 wanted to punch those people. He had been there. He had seen the explosion. He had watched his best engineer vanish into light. His terminal beeped with an incoming priority message. He opened it and frowned. The science division had detected strange readings at the edge of explored space, right at the location where the Time's Eternal Dawn Times had been attacked 5 years ago. "Interesting," he muttered. He forwarded the report to his analysts and marked it for investigation. Probably nothing. Space was full of strange readings, but something about it bothered him. Yuna arrived at the Xenobiology Institute and rushed to the research lab. Her partner, Dr. Hana, was waiting with excitement on her face. "I found it," Hana said immediately. "Look at this." She pulled up a holographic display showing the sensor data from 5 years ago. The explosion had created massive amounts of energy. But hidden in all that chaos was a pattern, a specific frequency that shouldn't exist. "This is a subspace signature," Yuna said, her hands trembling. "Yes. And it's not random. It's structured. Almost like a doorway. A doorway to what? I don't know. But Yuna, this signature is still active. It's faint. But it's there." The rift from the explosion never fully closed. Yuna stared at the data. Her scientific training told her to be cautious, to not jump to conclusions. But her heart was screaming something different. "He could be alive," she whispered. "We don't know that," Hana warned. "This could mean anything. The rift could just be a natural anomaly." No. Tae-hyun used a neural transfer device. That technology interacts with quantum fields. What if the explosion didn't kill him? What if it pushed him somewhere else? Somewhere else, like another dimension? Maybe. The old Silvari texts mention something called the threshold, a space between spaces where normal physics don't apply. Hana looked skeptical. "That's theoretical. Nobody has ever proven it exists. When other work and reasoned?" "Away." Hana looked skeptical. 5 years ago, quantum bombs were theoretical too. Now the Void Reavers use them. Yuna began typing rapidly on her tablet. "I need to contact Queen Valera. If anyone has resources to investigate this, it's her." Yuna, even if you're right, it's been 5 years. What if he's not coming back? Then I'll know for sure. But I can't stop looking. He's my brother. 2 weeks later, Yuna stood in the royal palace on the silvery homeworld. The building was ancient and beautiful, with walls that seemed to be made of liquid silver. Queen Valera had agreed to meet her immediately after receiving the message. The queen entered the room, and Yuna bowed respectfully. Valera moved with grace that seemed almost supernatural. Her silver skin caught the light and reflected it in patterns. "You have found something," Valera said. It was not a question. "I think so, Your Majesty." Yuna presented the data. The explosion left a rift in subspace. It's still open. Very small, very faint. But it's there. Valera studied the information carefully. Her expression didn't change, but her hands gripped the tablet tighter. "You believe he survived." "I believe it's possible. The neural transfer device might have protected his consciousness. The quantum bomb could have pushed him into another dimension instead of destroying him. This is unlikely. I know, but it's not impossible." Valera was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked up at Yuna with eyes that held 5 years of pain and hope. "I have been searching for any sign of him since that day. I have spent fortunes. I have called in every favor. And now his sister comes to me with what I have been praying to find. Will you help me investigate? I will do more than that. I will authorize a full expedition to the Rift site. We will use every tool at our disposal. If there is even the smallest chance that Taehyun is alive, I will find him." Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. "Thank you. Do not thank me. I owe him everything. This is the least I can do." Queen Valera gave orders immediately. Within hours, a science vessel was being prepared. The best researchers from 3 different species were assembled. Admiral Day 1 was contacted and informed of the mission. The galaxy had moved on from the tragedy 5 years ago. But some people never stopped searching. Some people never gave up hope, and sometimes, hope was rewarded. The science vessel times Dawn Seeker times floated quietly near the coordinates where the times Eternal Dawn times had been attacked 5 years ago. Inside, dozens of scientists monitored their instruments with intense focus. They had been here for 3 weeks, studying the faint subspace signature that Yuna had discovered. Admiral Day 1 stood on the bridge, watching the main view screen. He had come personally to oversee the mission. Something about this felt important. He couldn't explain it, but his instincts rarely failed him. "Anything?" he asked the sensor officer. "Still just the same readings, Admiral. A small rift in subspace, barely detectable. It's stable but showing no signs of activity." Yuna was in the science lab below, running calculations with Dr. Hana. Queen Valera had remained on her home world, but she received updates every hour. Everyone was beginning to lose hope. Maybe the rift was just a leftover anomaly. Maybe Taehyun really was gone forever. Then, everything changed. The alarms started screaming. Every sensor on the ship went crazy at once. The view screen filled with light as a massive energy surge erupted from the rift. "Report," Day 1 shouted. "The rift is expanding. Energy levels are off the scale. Get us back, full reverse." The ship's engines fired, pushing them away from the phenomenon. On the view screen, they could see space itself tearing open. The rift grew from a tiny point to a swirling vortex of light and color. It looked like a wound in reality. Yuna ran onto the bridge, her heart pounding. "What's happening?" "The rift is opening," Day 1 said. "Something's coming through." The vortex pulsed with energy. Then, slowly, an object began to emerge. It was small and metallic. An escape pod. Old Coalition design, covered in strange energy patterns that flickered and danced across its surface. "Scan that pod," Day 1 ordered. "Scanning now." "Sir, there's a life sign inside." "Human." Yuna grabbed the railing to steady herself. "Bring it in. Now." The Times Dawn Seeker Times extended its tractor beam and pulled the pod into the cargo bay. Security teams rushed to the location, weapons ready. Nobody knew what to expect. Medical teams stood by with stretchers and equipment. The pod's door hissed open. White smoke poured out. A figure stumbled forward and collapsed. The medical team rushed in. "It's a male human," one of the doctors called out. "Unconscious, but alive. Vital signs are weak, but stable." Yuna pushed through the crowd. She knelt beside the figure and turned him over. Her breath caught in her throat. The face was older than she remembered, but there was no mistaking it. "Tae-hyun," she whispered. Her brother's eyes flickered open for just a moment. He looked at her with confusion, like he didn't recognize where he was. Then his eyes closed again, and he fell back into unconsciousness. "Get him to medical now," the doctor ordered. They lifted Tae-hyun onto a stretcher and rushed him to the ship's medical bay. Yuna followed, her mind spinning. He was alive. After 5 years, her brother was alive. In the medical bay, the doctors worked quickly. They hooked Tae-hyun up to monitoring equipment and began running tests. Admiral Day-1 arrived and stood beside Yuna, staring at the man on the bed. "I don't believe it," Day-1 said quietly. "He came back," Yuna replied, tears streaming down her face. The lead doctor, an older woman named Dr. Park, approached them with a puzzled expression. "His condition is strange. Physically, he appears to have aged only about 6 months. But his neural activity is off the charts. His brain is showing patterns I've never seen before. Will he be okay? I think so. But he's been through something extraordinary. We need to be careful when he wakes up." Oh, they sent an immediate message to Queen Valera. The response came back within minutes. The Queen was coming personally. Nothing would stop her from seeing the human who had sacrificed himself for her. Tae-hyun woke up 6 hours later. His eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the bright lights of the medical bay. Everything felt wrong. The sounds were too loud. The lights were too bright. He could see things that shouldn't be visible. Energy patterns flowing through the walls. Quantum fields dancing in the air. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice rough. Yuna was at his side immediately. "You're safe. You're on the Times Dawn Seeker **. We found you." Tae-hyun looked at her, really looked at her. She was older, 5 years older, lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. Her hair was different. "How long?" he asked. 5 years. You've been gone for 5 years." He closed his eyes. 5 years. But it had only felt like months to him. Time had moved differently in that place. "The threshold. I was somewhere else," he said slowly. "A place between places. It's hard to explain. Time didn't work the same way." Dr. Park stepped forward. "Can you tell us what happened?" "After the explosion?" Tae-hyun tried to remember. The memories were fragmented and strange. "The quantum bomb tore a hole in space. But instead of killing me, it pushed me through. Into the threshold. It's a dimension between dimensions. A space where the barriers of reality are thin." "What did you see there?" Admiral Day-1 asked from the doorway. "Things that shouldn't exist. Entities. Old things. They've been trapped there for millions of years. They spoke to me. Showed me things." "What kind of things?" Tae-hyun sat up slowly, ignoring the doctor's protests. "They showed me the truth about the Void Reavers. About why they attacked the Times Eternal Dawn **. It wasn't random. They were looking for something specific. The ancient weapon," Yuna said. "Queen Valera told us. They wanted information about it." "It's not a weapon," Tae-hyun replied. "It's a seal. A lock. And it's the only thing keeping those entities from breaking through into our universe." The room went silent. Everyone stared at him. "You're saying there's something trying to invade our dimension?" Day-1 asked. "Not trying. Planning. They've been planning for a very long time. The Void Reavers are working for them. The attack on Queen Valera was just the beginning." Dr. Park scanned Tae-hyun's head with her medical device. "His neural patterns are definitely altered. He's showing abilities to perceive quantum fields at a level no human should be capable of. It's a side effect of being in the threshold," Tae-hyun explained. "I can see things now. Feel things. The boundaries between dimensions aren't solid anymore. Not for me." Over the next 2 days, Tae-hyun went through extensive debriefing. He told them everything he could remember about the threshold, about the entities there that called themselves the Unravelers, about how they fed on reality itself, consuming universes and leaving nothing behind. Queen Valera arrived on the third day. Taehyun was in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars. He heard the door open behind him but didn't turn around. "I owe you my life," Queen Valera said softly. "You don't owe me anything," Taehyun replied. "I made a choice that cost you 5 years. That changed you forever." He finally turned to face her. The queen looked the same as he remembered. Time moved slowly for the Silveri, but her eyes held a sadness that hadn't been there before. "I'm sorry," she said. "This is my fault. You suffered because of me. I suffered because of the Void Reavers, because of the entities in the threshold. Not because of you. Still, I have spent 5 years searching for you, hoping you might return. And now that you have, I find you are warning us of an even greater danger. The danger was always there. I just understand it now." Taehyun moved closer to the window. "The seal that protects our universe is weakening. It has been for centuries. Eventually, it will break. And when it does, the Unravelers will come through. How do we stop them? I don't know yet. But I know we need to find that seal. We need to understand how it works. And we need to do it quickly." Queen Valera stood beside him, looking out at the stars. "The seal is on my home world, hidden beneath the royal palace. My ancestors have guarded it for thousands of generations. Then that's where we start. The Coalition Council will not believe you. They will say the threshold affected your mind. I know. But we have to try." Yuna entered the lounge and joined them. "The council has requested your presence for a formal debriefing. They want to hear your story." "They too," Taehyun nodded. He had expected this. The council would be skeptical. They would doubt him, but he had to make them understand. The fate of everything depended on it. "Let's go then," he said. "Time to convince the galaxy that the impossible is real." As they left the observation lounge, Taehyun felt the quantum fields shifting around him. His new abilities let him sense things others couldn't. And right now, he could feel something stirring. Far away, at the edges of explored space, something was watching. The Unravelers knew he had returned, and they were preparing their next move. The Coalition Council chamber was a massive circular room with seats arranged in tiers. Representatives from dozens of species sat watching as Taehyun stood in the center. Above him, holographic displays showed his face to everyone present. The room was silent as he finished explaining what he had experienced in the threshold. "And that is why we must act immediately," Taehyun concluded. "The seal is weakening. The Unravelers are preparing to break through. We need to reinforce it before it's too late." A counselor from the Purity Alliance stood up. His species, the Korthan, were known for their skepticism of humans. "This is quite a story, Mr. Taehyun. You claim to have spent 5 years in another dimension. You claim to have met ancient entities that want to destroy our universe. Yet you have no proof." "I have my testimony," Taehyun replied calmly. "The testimony of a man who disappeared in a quantum explosion, who spent months, by his own account, in a place where time and space don't work normally. Forgive us if we question your mental stability." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Taehyun felt frustration building but kept his voice steady. "I understand your doubts, but I'm not asking you to take my word alone. Let me show you the seal. Let scientists examine it. The evidence is there." Another counselor, this one from the Silvari delegation, spoke up. "The seal beneath our palace is sacred. It has been kept secret for generations. We cannot simply allow outsiders to examine it." Queen Valera, who sat in the royal section, stood gracefully. "I am willing to allow it. If Taehyun speaks the truth, then our secrecy no longer matters. Everyone needs to know. Your Majesty, with respect, you are too close to this human," the Purity Alliance leader said. "He saved your life 5 years ago. This clouds your judgment." "My judgment is perfectly clear," Valera replied coldly. "I have studied the ancient texts. I know the legends of the threshold. Everything Tae-hyun describes matches those legends. Legends are not facts. Admiral Day-1 stepped forward. Then let's gather facts. Send a science team to examine the seal. Monitor the rift where Tae-hyun emerged. Study his neural patterns. Either his claims are true, or they're not. We should investigate before dismissing him. The council debated for hours. Finally, they reached a compromise. A small team would be allowed to examine the seal, but only under strict supervision. Meanwhile, sensor stations would be placed near the rift to watch for any unusual activity. It was less than Tae-hyun had hoped for, but it was a start. 3 days later, Tae-hyun, Yuna, and a team of scientists stood in the ancient chamber beneath the Silvari royal palace. The room was enormous, carved from a single piece of black crystal. In the center stood a structure that looked like a pillar of light made solid. Energy pulsed through it in waves. "This is incredible," Dr. Hana whispered. "The energy readings are unlike anything I've ever seen." Tae-hyun moved closer to the seal. He could feel it calling to something inside him. The quantum fields around it resonated with the changes in his own body. He reached out with his new senses and touched the energy pattern. Immediately, images flooded his mind. He saw the seal being created millions of years ago by a race that no longer existed. The precursors, they were called. They had discovered the threshold and realized the danger it represented. So they built seals at key points throughout the universe, keeping the dimensions separate. "It's weakening," Tae-hyun said, pulling his hand back. "I can feel it. The structure is breaking down." "How long do we have?" Yuna asked. "Years, maybe less. It depends on whether the unravelers find a way to accelerate the process." One of the scientists, a Korthan named Verim, looked skeptical. "This could all be in your imagination. There's no way to verify what you're sensing." Before Tae-hyun could respond, the chamber shook. Alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Queen Valera's voice came over the communication system. "We are under attack. All security personnel to defensive positions." The team rushed back to the surface. Outside, chaos reigned. Black ships filled the sky, firing weapons at the palace shields. Tae-hyun recognized them immediately. "Void Reavers," he said, but something was different about them. The ships glowed with the same strange energy he had seen in the threshold. They were stronger than before. Faster. More coordinated. Admiral Daewon's voice crackled over Tae-hyun's communicator. "Tae-hyun, we've got a problem. These Reavers are using technology we've never seen. Our weapons barely scratch them." "They've been enhanced," Tae-hyun replied. "The Unravelers are giving them power from the threshold." The battle raged for hours. Coalition forces struggled against the empowered Reavers. Then, something worse appeared. A massive ship, larger than anything the Reavers had used before. It descended slowly through the atmosphere, crackling with dimensional energy. A transmission came through on all frequencies. A figure appeared on every screen. He was humanoid but twisted. His form seemed to shift and flicker, like he wasn't fully in their dimension. When he spoke, his voice echoed strangely. "I am Kale," the figure said. "Once, I was like you. I guarded the seal. I protected this universe. But then I saw the truth. The Unravelers offer something better than mere existence. They offer transcendence." Tae-hyun stared at the screen in shock. This was the leader of the Void Reavers. But more than that, he was something else. Something changed by the threshold. "You're a precursor," Tae-hyun whispered. "I was," Kael agreed. "Until I understood that the seal was a mistake. We locked away the greatest source of power in existence. The Unravelers don't want to destroy your universe. They want to elevate it, to make it part of something greater. They want to consume it," Tae-hyun shouted back. "I've seen what they do. They feed on reality itself. You spent such a short time in the threshold. You don't understand. Join me, Tae-hyun. You've been touched by that realm. You have the potential to be so much more." "Never." Kale's expression hardened. Then you will die with the others. Queen Valera, I'm coming for you. Your bloodline is connected to the seal. When you die, it breaks completely, and the Unravelers will be free. The transmission ended. Kale's ship fired a massive beam of energy at the palace shields. The shields held, but barely. In the command center, Queen Valera stood with her military advisors. How long can the shields last? At this rate, maybe an hour, one of them replied. Tae-hyun burst into the room. We need to evacuate you. Right now. I will not run from my palace, Valera replied. If you die, the seal breaks. Millions will die. Billions. You have to survive. He's right, Admiral Day-1 said, entering behind Tae-hyun. I've got a ship ready. We get you off-world, and this attack loses its purpose. Another massive blast hit the shields. The lights flickered. Time was running out. Fine, Valera said reluctantly. But we're taking the research data about the seal. If I must run, at least we'll have information to work with. They rushed through the palace corridors as explosions rocked the building. Outside, Reaver ground forces had broken through the outer defenses. Silveri soldiers fought desperately to hold them back. Yuna stayed close to Tae-hyun. What are we going to do? Even if we escape, they'll just come after us again. I know, Tae-hyun replied. Which is why we need a real plan. We need to figure out how to reinforce the seal permanently. They reached the landing pad where a fast ship was waiting. Tae-hyun helped Queen Valera aboard, then turned back to look at the palace. His home for 3 years before the attack. That changed everything. Now it was under siege again. And it was his fault. KL had said it himself. Tae-hyun had been touched by the threshold. He was connected to all of this. Come on, Yuna shouted, pulling him toward the ship. They lifted off just as another massive explosion rocked the palace. The shields finally failed. Reaver ships poured into the gap, firing at anything that moved. As their ship climbed toward space, Tae-hyun watched the destruction below. The coalition fleet engaged the Reavers in a desperate battle. Ships exploded on both sides. This was only the beginning. Kale had made his move. The Unravelers were pushing forward. And somehow, Tae-hyun had become the key to everything. He closed his eyes and reached out with his quantum senses. He could feel the seal, far below in its chamber. Still intact, but weakening. He could feel the rift, where he had emerged, pulsing with energy. And beyond that, very far away, he could feel the threshold itself. The entities there were watching, waiting, hungry. We're running out of time, he said quietly. Queen Valera sat across from him, her expression grave. Then we must find a solution quickly, before there is no time left. The Coalition Emergency Command Ship times Unity times orbited a moon far from Silveri space. Inside, representatives from every major species worked frantically to coordinate their forces. The Void Reavers had attacked 6 different worlds in the past week. Each attack was more powerful than the last. Tae-hyun stood before a holographic projection of the seal, rotating it slowly with his hands. Yuna and Dr. Hana worked beside him, comparing the precursor technology with human engineering principles. They had been at it for 3 days straight, barely stopping to eat or sleep. I think I have it, Tae-hyun said suddenly. The seal isn't just blocking the threshold, it's filtering it. Taking the raw energy and converting it into something stable. Like a dam, Yuna said, understanding dawning on her face. Exactly. But the dam is cracking. We can't just patch it. We need to rebuild it entirely. Admiral Day-1 entered the lab, his face grim. We don't have time to rebuild anything. Kale's main fleet is moving. Our sensors show they're heading straight for the silvery home world. They're going after the seal directly, Queen Valera said, joining them. If they destroy it completely, the threshold will open. Then we need to stop them there, Tae-hyun replied. With what? We don't have precursor technology. Tae-hyun looked at his hands. Energy danced between his fingers, barely visible. We have me. I've been touched by the threshold. My body can channel that energy now. If we can build a device to amplify my connection, I might be able to strengthen the seal. Dr. Hannah pulled up calculations. It could work, but the power requirements would be enormous. You'd have to channel energy from the threshold itself. That's incredibly dangerous, Yuna protested. It could kill you, or it could save everyone, Taehyun replied quietly. Queen Valera stepped forward. There may be another way. My bloodline is connected to the seal. That's why Kale wants me dead. But that connection works both ways. If we combine my life force with your threshold abilities, we might be able to create a stable reinforcement. That could kill you too, Admiral Daewon pointed out. Then we both take the risk, Valera replied, looking at Taehyun. Together, they spent the next 2 days building the device. Human engineers worked alongside Silveri technicians. Combining their knowledge, the result was a machine that looked like a cross between a quantum computer and an ancient altar. It would connect both Taehyun and Queen Valera to the seal, allowing them to channel energy directly into its structure. But they needed time. Time to set it up. Time to make it work. Which meant someone had to hold off Kale's fleet. Admiral Daewon gathered the coalition forces. Every ship that could fly. Every pilot that could fight. They formed a defensive line around Silvari Prime, preparing for the largest battle in coalition history. This is it, Daewon said over the fleet-wide channel. Behind us is the seal that protects our universe. If we fail here, everything ends. But I've fought alongside humans for years now, and I've learned something. Humans don't give up. They don't accept defeat. And right now, that's exactly what the rest of us need to remember. We hold this line. No matter what comes through. Cheers echoed across the communication channels. Ships from a dozen different species, all united for one purpose. Kale's fleet arrived like a storm. The ships tore through space itself, leaving trails of dimensional distortion. There were hundreds of them, all enhanced with threshold energy. They glowed with colors that hurt to look at. The battle began. Coalition ships engaged the Reavers immediately. Weapons fire filled the space around Silvari Prime. Explosions bloomed like flowers of fire and light. Ships on both sides took damage. Some exploded, others limped away, trailing debris. But the coalition forces held their line. On the surface, Taehyun and Queen Valera descended into the ancient chamber beneath the palace. The device had been set up next to the seal. Yuna and Dr. Hannah monitored the equipment, making final adjustments. Are you ready? Valera asked Taehyun. As ready as I'll ever be, he replied. They positioned themselves on opposite sides of the device, neural connectors attached to their heads. Energy cables ran from the machine to the seal itself. Everything was in place. Beginning power-up sequence, Dr. Hannah announced. The device hummed to life. Immediately, Taehyun felt the connection forming. His consciousness expanded, touching the seal, feeling its structure. He could sense every crack, every weak point. The damage was worse than he had thought. Queen Valera's mind joined his. Her presence felt ancient and calm. Through her, he could feel the bloodline connection to the seal. Generations of guardians, stretching back thousands of years, all of them linked to this moment. I can see it, Valera whispered. The precursors. What they built. It's beautiful. Nah. I can see it. I can see it. I can see it. It's dying, Taehyun replied. We need to act now. Together, they reached out to the threshold. Taehyun had been there before. He knew the way. His consciousness touched that strange space between dimensions. Power flowed into him. Massive amounts of energy. Enough to tear a normal person apart. But Taehyun wasn't normal anymore. And Valera's bloodline connection helped stabilize the flow. They channeled the energy into the seal, feeding it, strengthening it, rebuilding the structure one quantum layer at a time. Above them, the battle raged. Kale's flagship pushed through the coalition lines, heading for the planet. Smaller Reaver ships followed it like sharks following blood. We can't hold them, one of the coalition captains shouted. You don't have to hold them, Admiral Day One replied. You just have to slow them down. Every second counts. Human fighters performed impossible maneuvers, dodging enemy fire and striking at weak points. Silveri cruisers formed a wall, their shields linked together. Ships from a dozen species fought with everything they had, and slowly, minute by minute, they held the line. Kale's flagship broke through the orbital defenses. It descended toward the surface, energy weapons charging. The target was clear. The palace, the seal chamber. On the ground, Silveri defense forces prepared for the worst, but they all knew it was hopeless. That ship carried enough firepower to level a mountain. In the seal chamber, Taehyun felt Kael's approach. He could sense the corrupted precursor's presence, the twisted connection to the threshold. He's coming, Taehyun said. Then we finish this quickly, Valera replied. They poured more energy into the seal. The structure began to glow, brighter and brighter. Cracks sealed themselves. Weak points strengthened. The ancient precursor technology responded to their efforts, but it wasn't enough. The damage was too extensive. They needed more power, more time. Kael's ship fired. A massive beam of energy struck the palace shields. The shields held for exactly 3 seconds before shattering. The palace itself began to crumble. In the chamber, the ceiling cracked. Debris fell around them. We're out of time, Dr. Hana shouted. No, Taehyun said. His voice was calm, determined. We're not done yet. He reached deeper into the threshold than he ever had before. Past the entities. Past the unravelers. To the fundamental energy that made up that strange dimension. He grabbed hold of it and pulled. Power flooded through him. More than he could handle. More than anyone could handle. His body began to burn with energy. Every nerve screamed in agony. Taehyun, stop, Yuna cried. You'll kill yourself. Maybe, he replied. But not before I finish this. Queen Valera felt what he was doing. She made a decision. Instead of trying to stop him, she joined him. She opened her own connection fully, drawing on generations of guardians. All that power, all that life force, flowing into the seal. The chamber exploded with light. The seal blazed like a newborn star. Above them, Kael's ship prepared to fire again, but then the seal's energy erupted upward, a pillar of pure light that punched through the ruined palace and into the sky. The light struck Kael's ship. The vessel shuddered, its threshold enhancements burning away. Systems failed. The ship began to fall. Kael himself appeared in the chamber, having teleported at the last moment. His form flickered between dimensions, barely holding together. He looked at Taehyun and Valera with rage. You can't stop this, Kael snarled. The seal will fail eventually. The unravelers will come through. Maybe. Taehyun replied, his voice echoing strangely. But not today. And not because of you. He released the full power of the seal. Energy washed over Kael, burning away his connection to the threshold. The corrupted precursor screamed and vanished, torn back into that space between spaces. The seal pulsed one final time, then stabilized. The light faded. The structure stood whole and complete. Stronger than it had been in thousands of years. Taehyun collapsed. Valera caught him as they both fell away from the device. Yuna rushed over, scanning them frantically. They're alive, she said, relief flooding her voice. Exhausted but alive. Above them, the Reaver fleet broke apart. Without Kael's power enhancing them, they were just normal ships. The coalition forces pressed the attack. Within an hour, the battle was over. 6 months later, Taehyun stood on the observation deck of a new space station. It had been built near the old Rift site, now a permanent monitoring station. He wore the uniform of a guardian, a new organization created to watch over the threshold. The procedure had changed him even more. He could now shift partially into the threshold dimension, becoming invisible to normal senses. He could sense disturbances across vast distances. He had become something more than human, but not entirely something else. Queen Valera visited often. She too had been changed by the experience. They shared a connection now. A bond formed by their joint effort to save the seal. She had finally married, as her people required. But Taehyun knew she would always consider him family. Yuna had been promoted to head of xenobiology for humanity. Her research into the threshold had made her famous. She had also gotten married, to Dr. Hana. Their wedding had been beautiful. Admiral Day 1 had retired, finally. He spent his days teaching young officers about tactics and strategy. But more importantly, he taught them about courage and sacrifice. The coalition had reformed. The Purity Alliance had dissolved, its members realizing that unity was more important than pride. Humanity now had a permanent seat on the council, not because of politics, but because they had earned it. Taehyun watched the stars and thought about everything that had happened. He had disappeared 5 years ago to save one life. He had returned to save everyone. The cost had been high. He could never go back to being normal. He would spend the rest of his life as a guardian, watching over the seal, but he had no regrets. "You saved us all," Valera's voice said behind him. She had entered quietly. "We saved everyone," Taehyun corrected. "Together. The seal will hold for millennia now, perhaps forever. Nothing lasts forever. But we bought time. Time for the next generation to be stronger, smarter, better prepared, and you'll be here, watching over them." Taehyun smiled. "Someone has to. Besides, the view is excellent." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. In the distance, the monitoring equipment showed the seal's status. Green across the board. Stable. Strong. The threshold was quiet. The unravelers were locked away. Peace had returned. But Taehyun knew it wouldn't last forever. Somewhere out there, in the spaces between dimensions, something still waited, still watched, still hungry, and when it tried to break through again, he would be ready. That was his purpose now, his duty. He had disappeared after saving the alien queen. He had returned 5 years later as something more. And now he would stand guard for as long as necessary, because that's what heroes did. They protected others, no matter the cost. The stars shined bright, and Taehyun smiled. Life was strange and wonderful and terrifying, but it was worth protecting, always.